Next on our program is the announcement of this year's winner of the Bavaria Award. The Bavaria Award recognizes investor, business, and NGO leaders who have played a key role at moving capital markets towards more sustainable practices. The award was started by Trillium Asset Management and Ceres in 2008 in honor of Joan Bavaria, Ceres founder. This year, the award will be presented by Will Lana. Will is a partner and investment manager in the California office of Trillium Asset Management.
Okay, thank you, Barney. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you. As Barney mentioned, 7 years ago, Ceres and Trillium Asset Management partnered to launch the annual Joan Bavaria Award, which celebrates Joan's distinguished career integrating environmental, social, and governance factors into the investment process and into shareholder engagements. Joan's legacy includes co-founding the Forum on Sustainable and Responsible Investment in 1981, founding Trillium Asset Management in 1982, and in 1989, co-founding Ceres. Joan believed strongly in the Ceres network and what we could accomplish by working together. Each year, the Bavaria Award gives us the opportunity to publicly acknowledge another exceptional leader who is working to transform the capital markets into a system that balances economic prosperity with social and environmental health. Before I announce this year's winner, I would like to take a moment to thank the panel of judges for the award. Thanks to Laura Berry of the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility, Mindy Luber of Ceres, Cheryl Smith of Trillium Asset Management, Reggie Stanley of Sustainable Growth Strategies, and Sister Patricia Daly of the Tri-State Coalition for Responsible Investment. Sister Daly was also the recipient of the Bavaria Award last year. The judges received a pool of highly accomplished nominees, and selecting a winner was not just a difficult task, it was a daunting one. Ultimately, the judges did select a winner who holds much in common with Joan and whose character embodies the spirit of the award. This year's winner is courageous. 25 years ago, at a time when few investment managers were willing to dedicate any resources to sustainability, she tied her career firmly to an investment philosophy built exclusively on sustainability themes. She is a visionary who recognized early on that the environmental challenges we face are global and that will require a global response to address them. In 1994, her team pioneered international active management in the United States, including with emerging markets companies, and since that time, she has catalyzed interest in global sustainable investment strategies. And she is entrepreneurial, having founded 2 major sustainable investment management groups, first Walden Capital Management, and then Boston Common Asset Management, where she currently serves as president. Both firms follow her vision, pursuing financial returns with integrity, leading shareholder engagements, and providing thought leadership for sustainable business. Should also mention she has founded the nonprofit DAWN, Direct Action for Women Now, and on the advisory board for UN-supported Principles of Responsible Investment. A friend to many here today, both in the ESG and the traditional investment community, we all owe her a great debt of gratitude. Please join me in congratulating this year's winner of the Bavaria Award for building sustainability into the capital markets, Geeta Aiyer.
Thank you all for this exceptional honor. As someone who knew and admired Joan Bavaria, I feel honored to accept this exceptional prize founded in her name. Joan was that rare human being who combined analysis and intellect with a startling capacity for vision and creativity. She began her career as an artist, and although she eventually became one of the leaders of the investment world, she never lost the ability to see through to the essence of a problem or to imagine a bold, new future. It is in this spirit that I would like to talk to you briefly about what our movement has become and where, through our continued hard work, it might go. We all know that we are in the midst of rapid change, and that this change can only be navigated if we understand our destination and if we are willing to make course corrections along the way as we go. We are charged with effecting radical change. As stewards of this transition to a more sustainable model in the face of extreme economic debt and ecological debt, we must embed these changes into our systems, structures, into the very cultures of our organizations, and the time is short. We will need the vision, the capacity for reimagining, the daring and tenacity, hope and faith that Joan embodied. It's sometimes hard to remember that changes have always been rapid. Many of the features of the capital markets that we now take for granted today have really been relatively new inventions. Managerial and cost accounting arose in the 20th century. Modern portfolio theory, capital asset pricing model, the first index fund, FASB, all occurred in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Mutual funds only took off in the 80s, and hedge funds shortly thereafter in the next decade. And then complex mechanisms and innovations reached a dizzying pace where financializing every kind of transaction became the object. Their scale and collective error brought the system down. We need financial creativity and innovation redirected. The capital markets lost track of some of the most fundamental principles of investment and ownership that, if properly understood and practiced, can guide our whole economy to sanity and sustainability. These principles, fortunately, lie at the heart of responsible investment. They include the core idea that owners of shares are owners of the corporation and that they have duties and opportunities that flow from that special status. The notion that equities are fundamentally a long-term asset class, though through which the interests of shareholders should align over time not only with those of the corporation but also of society. The concept that not everything can be immediately or perfectly quantified, and that critical pieces of information may be overlooked or rejected as immaterial if we wait for perfection. And the understanding that institutions with substantial equity holdings share a permanent structural interest in the long-term health of our ecosystems and the economy. Over the last decades, we have seen a convergence of mathematical skill and computing power into investing. While we harness this tremendous power into our work, we cannot become bounded and habitual in the variables that we consider and the scenarios that we model. The task of the investor always involves judgment. Truly great investors, or middle-aged like me, have bifocal lenses so that they can push back their chair from the models on the screen to think about what they are seeing, to let go of the past and ponder the future, imagining how a company or an industry or an entire economic or ecological system would function if the assumptions would change or the trends accelerate. One of the purposes of the long-term time horizon and the deeper investigation is to correctly withstand tracking error. It's the role of the analyst, equipped with the tools provided by financial analysis and ESG to ferret out information, to identify hitherto unappreciated relationships, to create a new formula, the new secret sauce, that correlates metrics, that factors and information into new models of thinking. This was the fun that brought all of us as investors into this field, to become CFAs, to be involved with investments. The ESG lens also allows investors to see emerging realities not yet deemed material. We can then assess the probabilities, the scenarios, the distributions, the discount rates, the risks. From all this careful thinking by many parties, we can move away from the reflexive and frequently counterproductive emphasis on simple metrics that reinforce destructive, short-term, quarter-to-quarter thinking. Many here have been working towards integrated reporting and to combine financial and sustainable investment in a usable way, tracking all the outcomes of corporate activity in one report. Most of all, good share owners need to maintain solid reference points. We might even call them values, about what a thriving, healthy planet and a thriving, healthy economy and genuine prosperity looks like. They must be able to see a company's business plan or an industry's evolution in the wider context of economic, environmental, and financial sustainability. I have tried to build this fundamental philosophy going back to the founding of two firms, Walden and Boston Common. Indeed, in naming both of them, I kind of hope to hide a subtle message statement about the values that I think are essential to a healthy economy. I chose the name Walden to refer to the independent thinking naturalist passion of Henry David Thoreau, a man who believed in the majority of one, willing to stand up to prevailing opinion, even to the point of civil disobedience. He also stood for frugality, low resource intensity, doing more with less, being resourceful, all qualities that we need to reaffirm today. There was even a small connection to early globalization and to me, since I've always found it amazing that ice cut from Walden and other ponds in Massachusetts were packed in sawdust and shipped all the way to Madras, India, so that the British could enjoy cold drinks as a perk of colonial rule. So fortunes were made in the global trade even then. Similarly, in choosing Boston Common as a name, I wanted to honor the old and vital concept to which we must also return, the concept of the commons. In my now adopted home of 30 years, Boston, Massachusetts, Boston Common was established in 1634 as a protected space and a resource that belonged to no one, but was important to all. Nearly 400 years ago, citizens were willing to pay for something that had public benefit. We should all be encouraged and proud of the transformation that we have seen in the last 2 decades. It's remarkable that in the US, $6.5 trillion, almost 18% of all invested assets are now invested in the SRI industry, but in some ways we are still at the beginning. Using ESG criteria is not just a product or a clever way of sorting companies into better and worse performers. It is a lens through which we can understand the creation of value and the direction of the economy at a more fundamental level. We should all be shocked that ESG analysis is not included in the curriculum or on the exams to become a chartered financial analyst. That needs to change. Because of the speed of innovation and the general paralysis of the political institutions, we now need new mechanisms to guide the powerful technological and market forces that are reshaping our planet. Capital markets are having, and always had, immense force, but left to themselves, without thought, without intentionality, without purpose, they can revert to destructive short-term thinking. Corporate managers can act as if they are playing a one-time game with the intent to maximize and take it all. It is up to shareholders, share owners, institutional investors, long-term asset owners, to point out that we are engaged in a long-term repeat game where sustainable reasonableness is rewarded. Thus, we must counteract the huge pressures on corporations to externalize their costs, to maximize their returns over the short term. And we know that the problems intensify when ownership and control drift apart. Our movement is about continuously bringing them back together. And in doing so, we actually make markets more efficient. In the short term, markets tend to be confused, unable to sort out all the different inputs and implications and to discern signal from noise. In my view, true market efficiency depends on us active investors, on the active investor participation of all who invest, active investing with analysis and judgment, and active engagement with clarity of purpose. This does not happen without effort. And in other words, active investors and asset owners with deep, long-term understanding of prosperity can use this knowledge and analysis and direct engagement to provide the critical checks and balances that the financial markets require to function as efficient, socially beneficial distributors of capital. We do not want to be, I don't know if Nero actually did this, but we don't want to be Nero facing the spreadsheets saying, I don't see Rome burning, but I can smell it. Joan Bavaria would be proud and astonished of how far we have come in all the last 25 years. But she would also be the first to point out that we have still a long way to go. The challenges ahead of us, from global inequality to resource depletion to climate change and beyond, will require every ounce of our combined commitment and talent. 2015 will be an important year for us as we move towards Paris, the Conference on Climate Change, and all of us invested and involved in sustainability must redouble our efforts to show that this transition to a low-carbon economy can be quick and smooth. I have always been inspired by the words of Martin Luther King, who said, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. What gives me hope today is that when it comes to the most pressing problems of humanity, we as a community have never been silent. Today, more than ever, the world needs to hear from us, and looking around this room, I have confidence that it will. Thank you very much.